class on Sunday morning was previous to Bruce's announcement concerning, him securing another job in Florida. And so I didn't really feel like it was really an appropriate setting to really discuss anything so much during the VBS. I didn't say anything, but I do have a little editorial comment I want to make, if you'll allow me to do that for the next minute or two. Certainly it's a shock to the congregation anytime a preacher leaves. Sometimes they leave and there's an awareness that there's problems, underlying problems and so forth that exist, that, maybe the tension between the preacher and the elders or whatever the case may be. But in this case, certainly we had nothing like that, and Greg made sure to stress that in a meeting we had last week with the deacons, that there was no underlying issues. And I concur with that. I think most of us would have been aware if there had been. But it's certainly still it's a little bit of a shock and all. And what I want to say is how encouraged I am to be a part of this congregation, knowing that the congregation will be able to continue on and continue with all the works and all the things that we choose to do. Chapter 13, when Paul and Barnabas were getting ready to go on their missionary journey, their first missionary journey, and the Holy Spirit said, "Separate me, Paul and Barnabas," and they were getting ready to go on this work. And Barnabas brings John Mark and said, "Here's this other guy." And this is kind of a paraphrase, obviously. It doesn't say this in the Bible like that, but I mean, here he brings him along. And we don't read a lot of the circumstances about how Barnabas came to choose to bring him along. But all of a sudden, if you look just from a Bible page perspective, it's like on my Bible that I have at home, John Mark is in this column right here, and over in the next column, just a little bit down, John Mark is leaving. So we're not talking about a whole lot of space, a whole lot of time dedicated to what had happened before John Mark is suddenly turning around and going back, and we don't really even know the circumstances. We don't know, did he have a sickness in the family that he found out about? Was he not feeling well? Was there a financial circumstance that had come up that he had to cover and he had to rush back home? We don't really know any of the circumstances. All we know is that because he left, it frustrated Paul. Okay, we know that because we see it later on. Because in another missionary journey, they're getting ready to pack up and get ready to go, and all of a sudden, Barnabas shows up, and who does he have with him? John Mark. There he is again. He's there, ready to go. Okay, and so Paul says he turned around on the last one. We're not taking him this time. Okay. And there was a little disagreement. And what happened there? Paul chooses Silas to go with him, and Barnabas takes the other and goes with him. And the work doubled, okay? The work doubled because of that, okay? There was some issue, and they didn't say, we're going to let this tear us up and slow the work down. The work doubled. And two people went out to two different places instead of two going to one place. I'm thankful here that we've got men that are going to step up, and I certainly feel like over the next months that the congregation is going to grow because we're going to have these men stepping up. I'm excited today to hear Jonathan Simpson is going to preach both the morning and afternoon service. We got so many people that can do this. And brethren, I want you to pray that the congregation is going to be in good shape. And the congregation in wherever, Florida, I'm not sure even what town it is, to be honest with you, okay? But wherever Bruce goes, we pray that that work will be good, because that work has suffered because they've been without a preacher for 10 months, I think. Is that right, Greg? Or 10 or 11 months? They've been without a preacher for a good stretch of time. So maybe the work will flourish there and flourish here. And I'm excited about that. One last thing, I one time got called by Bobby Liddell to go over to West Memphis and preach over there to a congregation that had their worship service at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Never heard of that before, okay? There's nothing wrong with it. It's not sinful. But I'd never heard of one meeting at 2 in the afternoon. Well, I got over there, and they had a building about this big, jam-packed full of people. jam-packed full of people. And I said, is y'all's preacher on vacation? Just curious to kind of talk. And is your preacher on vacation? They said, no, he's gone somewhere. We're not really sure. And so I said, why do y'all bring me from Bartlett, Tennessee, all the way over here? And said, we don't have anybody that can handle this. We don't have anybody that can preach. And I said, out of this is what I'm thinking. Out of this big collection of people, you don't have somebody that can stand up and preach for 10 minutes or 15 minutes. It don't have to be like a 5-hour sermon. I know Greg, your grandfather, somebody you had a sermon where they just read one verse after another. Isn't that correct? With no comment in between. Yeah, an uncle, okay? I remember you did that one time, And I thought back and I said, I'm so thankful to be a part of this, where we've got people that at the last minute that can step up. And we should be excited about the times that we have. Don't know when we'll get a preacher, okay? It could be a while. That's okay, because we're ready. And we're all going to have to step up and do a little more. We're going to talk about that today. All right. If you remember a couple of weeks ago, or last time I was up here, we started out on the lesson, Psalm 122, verse 1. If everybody will open your Bibles up to that real quick, and we'll get started here. We're just going to read this verse, and we're going to kind of pick up where I left off the last time, where it says, I was glad when they said unto me, let us go into the house of the Lord. And we talked about, during the last lesson we were here, about how excited we should be to be Christians, faithful Christians. It's hard for us sometimes in the day-to-day grind to really appreciate how great heaven's going to be. I know that Sandra always makes sure that I mention the street of gold, because I used to say the streets of gold, and she'd come at me and say, there's only one street of gold, okay? But even if there's one street, that's still pretty good, okay? I'll take that. But sometimes in the day-to-day grind, we lose sight. But what the writer here is trying to tell us is that we should be excited. We should be so thrilled to be here and be a part of this, to be a part of worshiping the living God who created all of this, and that we should be enthusiastic and encouraging of one another. Okay, we're going to drop back down now, and we're going to pick up kind of where we left off in Hebrews chapter 10, in verse 24 and 25, verses that we're very familiar with. And we'll read this, and we'll pick up from here. Hebrews 10:24 says, let us consider one another to provoke unto love and to good works, not forsaking the assembling of ourselves together as the manner of some is, but exhorting one another, and so much the more as you see the day approaching. I'm thankful that he didn't say not forsaking the worship service as the manner of some is. He said not forsaking the assembling of ourselves together. What does that include? That includes Bible class. That includes the VBS. That includes gospel meetings. That includes anything where the elders have deemed it a time where we should all come together. If we really stop and think about it, we're really asked from the elder standpoint here to give 1 hour at 9 o'clock, 1 hour at 10 o'clock, 1 hour at 1 o'clock, and 1 hour at 7 o'clock on Wednesday. That's 4 hours out of 168. Now, I don't know on a percentage basis what that is, but if I had to take a wild guess, because I did not calculate it, but I'm going to take a wild guess based on my intellectual capacity and say that's around 3%, 3.5% of our week that God asks us, or the elders ask us to commit to worship and Bible study. And anybody should be ashamed of themselves if they can try to even put up an argument saying, I don't need to come to Bible class. Bible class is not important. Barry? 2.3%. That was really what I was going to say, but I didn't want to show off. I was going to say 2.32685, but anyway, anybody that would want to argue or express concern over the fact that the elders have set that time aside should be ashamed of themselves, okay? And we talked about at the close of the last lesson the importance of exhorting one another, encouraging one another, being an encourager. Barnabas was an encourager. Barnabas is listed in the Bible as an encourager. We should take note of what Barnabas did when we consider ourselves and we consider, because if we look around this room right here, okay, I know a little about some of you and a lot about more of you, but here's what I know. Even the little that I know of you, I could go across the room here and almost tell you, each one of you, certain things that are a concern in your life, okay, that is a concern in your life right now, okay? And our job is to encourage and exhort one another and say, come on, we're going to make it. We're going to make it. We talked about this at the close of the lesson last week, or a couple of weeks ago. The Greek word, I may have mentioned this, for assembling means a gathering together. The command here then is to meet together for the worship of God, and this responsibility is placed on every Christian to do it. It is implied through the verse itself. Listen to this now. Listen to this. This is very critical. I'm not going to give you a test on this, but this is critical. It is implied that there is blame or fault wherever there is neglect. I don't remember who I got this quote from, but I think that is very powerful. It is implied that there is blame or fault wherever there's neglect. Oh, it says Barnes Notes out beside it. So that's who said it. We are commanded not to forsake the assembling of ourselves together. We are commanded to exhort each other. Do not forsake the assemblings and do exhort. The exhorting was to be done in the assemblies. If we do not assemble, we cannot obey this command to exhort one another. Failure to assemble is an act of direct disobedience to God's commands. Do not forsake and do exhort. We see here in this writing in the book of Hebrews, this was written for a reason. Already, just years after the death of Jesus, as the church assembled, and they had people that had, maybe some that were alive, that had even seen miraculous things and everything else taking place, and that they were so much closer to the cross than we are, yet already there were people in this time that had already chosen to start forsaking the assembling together. That's why this is written. And it comes all the way forward, 20 centuries, 21 centuries, however long it's been, all the way to today, and this speaks to us with the same force that it was meant to be spoken in that day. Attendance and faithfulness in our worship and in our attendance to Bible class and so forth is so imperative. Turn to 2 Samuel chapter 11. Yeah, Greg?
So, as many of you know, Dewey and I have a practice after the morning sermon to get up and address the audience here. And I don't know if we both do it, but I say virtually every time that I hope to see you at 1 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that becomes such a routine in my encouragement that it's not really heard. Sometimes I'll either, if we're having something happen, I'll encourage people to do that, even if it's not something they normally do. But I'm not sure that anybody really hears that. So
Greg, they are missing, here's what they're missing. They're missing the opportunity to encourage somebody else, okay? That's what they're missing. They're missing the responsibility to be there to encourage other people. Like I said, I mean, you know, everybody's got their backpacks on their back, and everybody's got their load of different concerns and worries on their back. And a lot of people need to have somebody come and help carry that load sometimes. And you could be the very one that could lift somebody up out of the depths of despair. And that's why we're commanded to be here. See, you know, maybe it's just me. See, I think you ought to say, we expect you to be here, okay? God expects you to be here. We're going to talk about Jesus' expectations in just a minute, okay? But, you know, we're expected to be here. I mean, if you're a faithful Christian, we shouldn't say hope you'll be here, or I'm not sure the phrase you just used, and I don't have an issue with that, but I'm just saying that I don't have any problem if you go more direct and say, the Lord expects you to be here, okay? He died on the cross so that we can have the hope of eternal salvation, and you know what? We're here to honor the death of Jesus when we're here, and the fact that through his death we have that hope of eternal salvation. And you're going to tell me that you can find anything more important than that? Anything more important than that? Any other reason to be here? I mean, because here's the thing. When we line up on the day of judgment, and I know we kind of visualize it's going to be a long line, people are going to be lined. I don't know how it's going to work in the end, but it says we're going to all appear, so it makes it sound like you're going to be called up one at a time, but I don't know how it'll work. But anyway, I can't imagine the list of excuses that will be made on the day of judgment. I've seen one time a book that was printed about the excuses that people gave why they were late for work and why they had to miss work. And, you know, it's written in a comedic type format. In other words, you're reading this and you think, these people must think their bosses are the dumbest people in the history of the world. Because they come up with all this, kind of like what I used to say. You know, when I would go and they'd say, why do you not have your homework? And I'd say, the dog ate it. And then my buddy would say, you ain't got a dog, you know? You don't even have a dog. Well, a dog ate it. A dog came to our house and ate it, and then ran back out. But, you know, you read this, but can you imagine the people having to make excuses? Sally? Yep. Absolutely. Sally makes the point here for those that are maybe listening online that it is a heart problem, and indeed it is. That is a great statement, unbelievable depth to that statement right there, okay? Turn to 2 Samuel chapter 11. We're going to read 4 verses we're very, very familiar with. 2 Samuel chapter 11, verses 1 through 4. And it came to pass after the year was expired, at the time when kings go forth to battle, that David sent Joab and his servants with him and all Israel, and they destroyed the children of Ammon and besieged Rabbah, I guess how you pronounce that. But David tarried still at Jerusalem. And it came to pass in an eventide that David arose from off his bed and walked upon the roof of the king's house. And from the roof he saw a woman washing herself, and the woman was very beautiful to look upon. And David sent and inquired after the woman. And one said, is not this Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam, the wife of Uriah the Hittite? We get a lot of information in these 4 verses, a lot of information. But there's one point in these 4 verses that is the most significant of all. Who can tell me what that little statement is, or that verse? Anybody want to take a shot at it? A lot of information. That is exactly right. And here's the main point right here, is that David was not where he was supposed to be. David was not where he was supposed to be. Listen to it again, what it says. But David tarried still at Jerusalem. He's got all of his people out in battle, and he has stayed behind in Jerusalem. I think that statement is in there to make it, to stress the importance to us of being where we're supposed to be. Being where we are supposed to be. On Sunday morning, let me tell you, I've mentioned this to young people before, and I've mentioned it to people. Me and Garrett and Nadia, when we would do our Bible class, I would stress this to them over and over again. When you become a Christian, here's the thing. You don't have to wonder on May the 15th of 2063, if that falls on a Sunday, where you are going to be. You've already made that commitment when you came up out of that water right there. You made that commitment. This was a binding commitment. Lord, thank you for forgiving me of my sins, and here is my commitment. That when the doors are opened and the lights are on, I will be there. You do not have to worry about me being on Sunday morning. You don't have to worry about me being here on Sunday night. The decision was made when I came up out of the water. I know where I'm going to be. David knew where he was supposed to be, and he wasn't there. Did anybody notice something this week that happened to two people that were not where they were supposed to be? Did anybody? I know y'all all saw this. Say that what, Jonathan? Well, that's right. The video of the two people on the kiss cam of all things. You know, there was a rock concert going on, and these people show up. You know, they pan around, and you know they highlight different people. When they highlight, they're supposed to kiss. And when the camera pops up on them, the man ducks and the woman turns and covers her head up. And the guy said either they're shy or they're having an affair. And guess which one it was? They weren't shy. And I mean, guess what? You know what the problem was? They were not where they were supposed to be. Should have been at their homes. She was not married, but he was. He should have been at home with his family. Brethren, let me tell you something. The elders shouldn't have to get up and say anything like, we expect you to be here, we hope to see you at 1 o'clock or whatever. That ought to be assumed because we are committed. We should be committed when the doors are open, we're here. All right. That's correct. And Sandra makes the point that are we teaching our young people? Are we teaching all of, you know, sometimes a person becomes a Christian and they're 50 years old. You know, we should be the example setters, and we should explain to them and make sure that they understand when they make this commitment, this is a lifetime commitment. This is a lifetime commitment. If we live to be, you know, in the right mental state, we're still committed. We are still a part of this. Barry? Barry makes a point about the importance of being a good example. And, you know, I'll say this is kind of a sidebar to our lesson, but I will say this, you know, sometimes, you know, we enter into the worship service and it's like we're coming to an execution. You know what I'm saying? We come in and, you know, I can't remember the actor's face. It would always be, you know, his mouth was turned down. In other words, we come in and we look like we're not enthused about where we're at. We should be so excited when we're here that the enthusiasm, and it does not. Listen to me. I don't want it to be fake enthusiasm. But you got to reach down within you and say, what have I got here? What, you know, if we walked outside right now, I was so excited the other day when I went to the gym and I got out of my car and I looked down and there was a $1 bill there. I couldn't believe it. I was so excited. I picked it up. I said, I got a $1 bill. We should be, what if we went out and found a $100 bill sitting beside our tire when we went out here, okay? We'd be, you know, then you'd put it in you'd be excited about it. But we've got so much more to grab hold of here. And we should be excited. And so that when somebody sees us, they say, I want what they have. Most people say, you know, I don't know that I want what they got. Tanya? Mm-hmm.
I know my mother wanted to go to church every time so bad, and sometimes she just couldn't. She wasn't in the right frame of mind with her dementia setting in. But, how very much it means to them. We've got people in this congregation that would love dearly to be here. And so I think that's a good example to point at, because sometimes we take it for granted.
Tanya makes the point that how much some of our members that are not able to be here, how much they appreciate when they can come. And I totally agree with that. That people that cannot attend when they reach those senior years, how much they miss being a part of it, because they're a part of something. It's a little different when you're sitting at home isolated on the couch and you're watching it online. You know, you just don't feel necessarily a part of it. I appreciate the fact that we do broadcast it. You know, it is important that we do, but they still would have that desire to be a part of it. All right, let's kind of hurry along here. Every Christian who sincerely desires to be all he can become and do all that he can do and serve Christ with all his being will be present at every service he is capable of attending. And only the most pressing of reasons will keep him from the assemblies of the saints. There are pressing reasons, okay? Sickness, other circumstances beyond our control. We had a guy that preached at Berkeley. When Gary Colley left Berkeley, we went a period of time and didn't have a preacher. And I remember the guy that was preaching, he was a guy that was well known around the Memphis area, but he was kind of retired, and he'd come back to help Berkeley. But anyway, he said, I have these family members all the time that come in and stay with me. And one part of my family will come in and they'll say, we've been on a long trip and we're here and we don't have an opportunity to go with you on Sunday morning. And he said, and his wife concurred with this, which I thought was kind of comical, but he said, here's the deal. When I leave, you leave. You can drive around for 3 hours. You can go to the restaurant. You can go wherever you want to. But I'll be open again at 12:30, and you're welcome to come back in. But nobody is going to sit at home on the Lord's Day when they have the capacity to go. You'd had to know this guy to, and I thought, good for him, I always wanted to go over to his house with a video camera and video that because I thought that was kind of funny because I'd like to have seen him coming out and flushing his relatives out and saying, we'll be back in 3 hours. These factors include a desire to obey every command, adhere to every precept, and respect every warning given in the Word of God. This will motivate us to attend every service. And, just as a side note on this, the importance of the Lord's Supper itself, the Lord's Supper, if we miss the worship service, we're not a part of it, or something that Jesus himself instituted. And I got these little quotes here from a couple of different sources. As we eat, we focus on this suffering of Jesus and how he died for us. And this suffer binds us together with the Lord. And when we choose to not be a part of that, Jesus, who died on the cross and instituted this for us to partake every Sunday, every first day of the week. Every first day of the week we partake of this. And when we choose not to do this, we are literally, as I've said before in these Bible classes, shaking our fist in the face of God and Jesus himself and saying, I'll do what I want to when I want to. And this is the way that I choose to spend my Sunday morning. Greg? Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And, if you have time today, read Luke chapter 22, the verses that deal with the Jesus instituting the Lord's Supper, and listen to the wording that it says here. And we read in 1 Corinthians chapter 11, this do in remembrance of me. When we come to partake of the Lord's Supper, and it says this right here, in remembrance of me, right on our table. We're remembering Jesus and his death. And we're forsaking and we're choosing to do something else. Brethren, we need to make sure that we understand the significance of attendance at all times. And this is a commandment, by the way. This is not a suggestion. Don't forsake the assembling is not a suggestion. It is a command. Don't do it. Okay? When the faithful gather, Bible class, worship service, I'm there. I'm not going to forsake, and I'm going to be there to encourage and lift up other people. And we know the importance of the commands, and I wrote down a couple of things related to commands, and I guess our bell ringer is not on the job this morning because it's a couple of minutes past. But anyway, Paul said in 1 Corinthians chapter 14, verse 37, he said this, there you go. Had to wake him up. If any man think himself to be a prophet or spiritual, let him acknowledge that the things that I write unto you are the commandments of the Lord. These are just not things that we can just casually brush off and say, there is no significance in this. The things that we read, and I mentioned a couple of weeks ago that depending on what you look at, there's over 1,000 commandments in the New Testament. That's unbelievable. I wrote down maybe 10 or 15 of them. We'll never get to them today, but I wrote down about 10 or 15 of them. But we have to understand when we come across things like the importance of being in worship service, the importance of being in Bible class, and the exhortation that we should be given, that these are the commandments of the Lord Himself, okay? Zacharias and Elizabeth, the parents of John the Baptist. You ever read about them? You know, most of the time we don't have very many lessons on John the Baptist's parents. But I found this significant right here, that when it mentions them, it says this right here, and they were both righteous before God. Why John the Baptist became the person that he became? Should we wonder that? No. One more reading here, and this will be the end of the lesson here. Turn to 1 John chapter 2. These verses right here are so powerful. When we consider the book of the books of John, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John, I'll go real quick on this, we'll be through. 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John, it talks about early in the chapter 1, if we walk in the light as He is in the light, He is faithful and just to forgive us our sins, okay? If we walk in the light, there's the qualifier. And then all through the book of 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John, it tells us what we've got to do to make sure we walk in the light. One of the things we've got to make sure we do is keep His commandments. Because this shows up about 4 different times in the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John, the significance of commandments. But I love this particular reading. Remember now, this is what you have to do to walk in the light. And hereby we do know that we know Him if we keep His commandments. 1 John chapter 2, verse 4. He that saith, I know Him, and keepeth not His commandments, is a liar, and the truth is not in him. Oh, I love this one. But whosoever keepeth His word, in him verily is the love of God perfected, and hereby know we that we are in Him, if you keep His word, if you keep His commandments. Are you keeping His commandments today? Have you been keeping them this week? Are you seeking to do all that you can to make sure that you live a righteous and holy life, keeping all the commandments right there in front of you, making sure, hey, I'm doing them because I love to do them, not because I'm being forced to do them. Thank y'all for being here. It is a great to know that everybody that's here is chosen to be here. They could have chosen to be anywhere else. But they chose to be here. And that is an encouragement to me. It's an encouragement to the elders. I appreciate you being here. Look forward to Jonathan. You ready to go? I'll take that as an affirmative.